Welcome to the deep dive. So, you've shared some really interesting material on software testing with us.
Yeah, it's a crucial area.
Absolutely. And today we're going to try and unpack a core concept, the difference between test cases and test scenarios.
It trips a lot of people up.
I bet. Think of this as, getting a solid handle on a key part of how software actually becomes reliable.
Exactly. How the sausage gets made, so to
Oh.
speak.
Yeah. So whether you're maybe gearing up for a discussion at work, trying to get your head around software quality, or you're just curious about what goes on behind the scenes with your favorite apps, this should be useful.
Hmm.
We'll be drawing on the articles, research, notes you sent over to really clarify this.
Sounds good. And, understanding this difference, it really offers valuable insight for anyone involved with software, not just the testers themselves.
Right?
It gives you a clearer perspective on the level of rigor and the systematic approach that ensures the tech we rely on actually works as expected.
Okay, so let's jump right into the basics then. What exactly is a test scenario?
Well, at its heart, a test scenario is any aspect of a software application that is testable. Simple as that, really.
Okay, testable.
Yeah, it's a high-level concept. It basically answers the question, what are the key functionalities we need to check?
Gotcha. Like the big buckets.
Exactly. So for an e-commerce site, maybe you could have test scenarios like verify the product search works correctly, or ensure the payment process is successful,
Uh-huh.
or even just confirm users can log in.
Yep.
See, they're broad outlines of what needs testing.
Right. So it's the overall goal that what we need to test. And then we have test paces. What's the definition there?
Okay, so the test case, that drills down into the specifics. It's a detailed set of actions you perform to verify a particular feature or bit of functionality.
So much more granular.
Much more. A well-defined test case, it specifies the exact steps a tester will take, the specific data they'll use, think like actual usernames or item names, login details, that kind of thing.
Right. The nitty gritty.
Yeah, and any conditions that need to be in place before the test, we call those preconditions.
Yeah.
And crucially, the expected result or outcome after the test is done.
So if the scenario is check the login, a test case would be the actual steps type username, user one, password pass 123, click submit.
Exactly. And it would also state the expected outcome. User is successfully logged in and redirected to dashboard.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the material you sent mentions test cases are generally derived from test scenarios. How does that usually work?
Precisely. So once you've identified those high-level test scenarios, like our verify the product search works correctly example,
Mhm.
you then break that down into all the different ways a user might actually interact with that search feature.
Okay.
And that leads to creating multiple test cases that all fall under that one scenario, like searching with a valid keyword, searching with a misspelled keyword, searching with nothing entered.
Right. All the different possibilities.
All the possibilities you need to cover, yeah.
That makes sense. The sources you provided had a really useful table outlining the core differences. Maybe we should go through those.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It breaks it down quite clearly.
Okay, so the first point it makes is about the level of documentation.
Yes, exactly. A test scenario is considered high-level documentation. It describes the end-to-end functionality, often just in a concise single-line statement,
Like a headline?
pretty much. Whereas a test case, that's detailed documentation. It includes the precise test steps, the specific data inputs, the expected outcomes, everything needed to thoroughly test the features related to that scenario.
So, scenario. Brief overview.
Yeah.
Test case. Detailed instruction manual.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
The next difference noted is the focus of each.
Right, so a test scenario primarily focuses on what to test. It identifies the area or functionality that needs looking at.
Just the what.
Just the what. A test case, though, it expands on this. It focuses on both what to test the specific feature and, really crucially, how to test it.
The how.
Yes, the exact sequence of actions and the data to be used. That how is key.
That really seems to be the big distinction, doesn't it? Okay, next point in the table addresses ambiguity.
That's right. Because test scenarios are often quite brief, just that one-liner. There's a greater potential for ambiguity. Different people might interpret ensure user profile can be updated in slightly different ways. You know.
Yeah. What exactly needs updating?
Exactly. But test cases, with their super well-defined steps and expected results, they aim to minimize that ambiguity. They provide a clear, repeatable testing process.
More detail equals less confusion. Makes sense.
Well.
Okay, the next difference is about where these come from, the derivation. We touched on this, but let's maybe dig in a bit more.
Sure. So test scenarios, they're typically derived from higher-level project documents. The sources mentioned the BRS and the SRS.
Right, BRS and SRS. Quick reminder what those are.
Yeah, good point. So BRS is the business requirement specification, basically, what the
Yeah.
business needs the software to do.
The why and what from a business perspective.
Exactly. And the SRS is the software requirement specification, which details how the software will be designed and built to meet those business needs.
Okay.
Business analysts usually drive the BRS. System analysts focus more on the SRS. Test scenarios kind of bridge the gap, translating those high-level needs into testable functions.
Got it.
And then, like we said, test cases take those scenarios and break them down into the specific executable steps.
Okay, so business needs, software design scenarios, what to test cases, how to test.
You got it. That's the flow.
Cool. Next difference highlighted is the testing approach.
Right. The sources indicate that test scenarios are used a lot in Agile testing for end-to-end functionality checks.
Agile, meaning those quick cycles of development.
Exactly. It's that iterative development approach, lots of collaboration, flexibility. In that context, test scenarios give you a good high-level check that key stuff is working in each cycle.
A quick sanity check, almost.
Sort of, yeah. Whereas test cases, they're more aligned with exhaustive testing. The goal there is to cover as many specific conditions and possibilities as you possibly can. Much deeper.
Okay, so scenarios for a quick, broad check, cases for a deep dive.
Precisely.
The table also points out a difference in the action level.
Yeah. Test scenarios represent high-level actions, like what a user generally wants to achieve. Search for a product.
Mm-hmm.
Test cases, being much more granular, they represent low-level actions, the individual clicks, typing things in, the actual steps the user performs to do that search.
High-level intent versus low-level interaction.
Perfect summary. And finally, the table addresses the resources and time involved.
I imagine cases take longer.
Generally, yes. Creating and executing test scenarios usually requires less time and fewer resources compared to developing and running all those detailed test cases.
Makes sense.
The sheer nature of test cases, needing that thorough documentation, specific data setup, careful execution, it just makes them more resource intensive.
Logical. More detail equals more effort. Okay, now, to really nail this down, let's use that practical example. Check the login functionality. What are some actual test cases that might come from that one scenario?
Right, the sources gave some good examples here. For that single scenario, check login functionality, you could easily have test cases like verify successful login with valid username and password. That's the obvious one.
When's the happy path?
The happy path, exactly. But then also, check error message when invalid username is entered, verify behavior with incorrect password, test login with blank username and password fields.
Okay, testing the failures.
And also things like check the forgot password link works.
Yeah.
Test login using a valid phone number if that's an option, and maybe even verify the you remember me checkbox functionality.
Wow, just for login, that's quite a few.
It adds up quickly if you want to be thorough.
Yeah, it really underscores the level of detail needed for proper testing. Okay, so let's shift gears slightly to the why. Why bother writing all these test cases? What's the big payoff?
Well, test cases serve several really vital purposes. First off, they help ensure the software meets the required standards, guidelines, and, critically, the customer's needs and expectations.
So proving it does what it's supposed to do.
Exactly. They provide a systematic way to validate those expectations. Plus, good test cases bring more control and logic to testing. They improve coverage of different data inputs and process flows.
Making sure you test different situations.
Right. And they let us simulate how real users would actually interact with the software. But ultimately, their main goal is to find errors or defects.
Catch the bugs before the user does.
That's the ideal.
Right.
And just practically, having detailed test cases gives the testing team a clear structure. It simplifies their work.
So they're about correctness, coverage, user simulation, finding bugs, and efficiency for the testers. Lots of reasons.
Definitely.
What about test scenarios then? We know they lead to cases, but what's their own specific importance?
They fulfill a different but equally crucial role. Their main job is to verify the overall functionality, the big picture stuff.
The end-to-end flow.
Yeah, ensuring the business processes and user workflows within the software actually line up with the requirements. And because they're higher level, more easily understood.
By non-tech people.
Exactly. They can be reviewed and signed off by business analysts, developers, sometimes even the clients. It ensures everyone agrees on what working looks like.
Getting that shared understanding.
Absolutely. They also help confirm the software handles the most common and critical use cases. Plus, they're a quick way to estimate testing effort early on and create initial plans or proposals.
Useful for planning.
Very. And finally, like we keep saying, once agreed, they provide that clear framework for developing all the detailed test cases later.
Okay, so scenarios are about validating the overall flow, ensuring stakeholder agreement, covering common use cases, aiding planning, and guiding test case creation. Also vital.
Both are essential, just at different levels.
Right. So, are there any key best practices we should mention for creating these? Maybe start with test cases.
Yeah, sure. For test cases, you want them to be really clear, straightforward, easy for anyone on the team to execute.
No ambiguity.
Definitely not. Always write them from the end user's perspective. How would they actually do this?
Mm-hmm.
Avoid unnecessary repetition if you can. Be efficient. Make sure they cover all the relevant requirements from the BRSSRS. Don't assume anything works. Verify it explicitly.
Explicit checks.
Yes. And finally, make sure each test case is uniquely identifiable, like give it a clear ID or name.
Good practical tips. What about best practices for test scenarios?
For scenarios, concise single-line statements are often best. Clearly describe what needs testing.
Keep it simple.
Simple, easy to understand language for everyone involved. And crucially, before you even write them, make sure you've really understood the requirements thoroughly.
Do your homework first.
Definitely. Assess those requirements carefully. And maybe from a practical angle, identify any tools or specific data you might need for testing those scenarios early on.
Plan ahead. Got it. This
Okay.
has been super helpful, really clarifying that distinction.
Good.
Understanding that, test scenarios define what to test high level, while test cases detail how to test specifics. It really highlights the systematic approach needed for quality software.
It's a structured process.
It really is. And it definitely gives you more appreciation for the reliable tech we use every day. What's also interesting is thinking about how a broad scenario might hide complexities
Oh,
that
absolutely.
you only uncover when you start writing those detailed test case steps,
Yeah.
right? Thinking about all the edge cases.
Exactly right. A simple scenario like user can check out hides dozens, maybe hundreds of potential test cases when you consider different items, discounts, payment methods, addresses.
Yeah, absolutely. So both test scenarios and test cases are clearly indispensable for robust software testing.
Completely different levels, complementary roles, both contributing massively to quality and stability.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Considering the software you rely on daily, what might be some of the key test scenarios you imagine the development teams prioritize? To ensure your smooth user experience?
Interesting question.
And then what level of detail do you now picture going into those individual test cases that make that software actually work reliably for you day in, day out?
Yeah, that puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.